This is Extract 8 of Roald Dahl's Danny, the Champion of the World. I knew it was the police. I didn't dare to look round to see if they were stopping and coming back after me. I was certain they would stop. Any policeman in the world would stop if he suddenly passed a lonely boy in a tiny car chugging along a small road at 2:30 in the morning. My only thought was to get away, to escape, to vanish, though heaven knows how I was going to do that. I pressed my foot harder still on the accelerator. Then, all at once, I saw in my own dim headlamps the tiny gap in the hedge on my left-hand side. There wasn't time to brake or slow down, so I just yanked the wheel hard over and prayed. The little car swerved violently off the road, leaped through the gap, hit the rising ground, bounced high in the air, then skidded sideways round the hedge and stopped. The first thing I did was to switch off all my lights. I'm not quite sure what made me do this, except that I knew I must hide. I knew if you're hiding for someone in the dark, you don't shine lights all over the place to show where you are. I sat very still in my dark car. The hedge was a thick one, and I couldn't see through it. The car had bounced and skidded sideways in such a way that it was now right off the track. It was behind the hedge and in a sort of a field. It was facing back towards the filling station, tucked in very close to the hedge. I could hear the police car. It had pulled up about 50 yards down the road, and now it was backing and turning. The road was far too narrow for it to turn round in one go. Then the roar from the motor got louder, and he came back fast with engine revving and headlamps blazing. He raced past the place where I was hiding and raced away into the night. This meant the policeman had not seen me swing off the road, but he was certain to come back again looking for me. And if he came back slowly enough, he would probably see the gap. He'd stop. He'd get out of the car. He'd walk through the gap and look behind the hedge, and then his torch would shine in my face and he'd say, "What's going on, sonny? What's the big idea? Where do you think you're going? Whose car is this? Where do you live? Where are your parents?" He'd make me go with him to the police station, and in the end, they would get the whole story out of me and my father would be ruined. I sat quiet as a mouse and waited. I waited for a long time. Then I heard the sound of the motor coming back in my direction. It was making a terrific noise. He was going flat out. He whizzed past me like a rocket. The way he was gunning the motor told me he was a very angry man. He must have been a very puzzled man too. Perhaps he was thinking he'd seen a ghost boy driving in a ghost car. I waited to see if he would come back again. He didn't come back. I switched on my lights. I pressed the starter. She started at once. But what about the wheels and the chassis? I felt sure something must have got broken when she jumped off the road into the cart track. I put her into gear and very gently began to ease her forward. I listened carefully for horrid noises, but there were none. I managed to get her off the grass and back onto the track. I drove very slowly now. The track was extremely rough and rutted. The slope was pretty steep as well. The little car bounced and bumped all over the place, but she kept going, and then at last ahead of me and over to the right, looking like some gigantic black creature crouching on the crest of a hill, I saw Hazel Wood. Soon I was there. Immense trees rose up towards the sky all round the right-hand side of the track. I stopped the car. I switched off the motor and the lights. I got out, taking the torch with me. There was the usual hedge dividing the wood from the track. I squeezed my way through it, and suddenly I was right inside the wood. When I looked up, the trees had closed in above my head like a prison roof, and I couldn't see the smallest patch of sky or even a single star. In fact, I couldn't see anything at all. The darkness was so solid around me I could almost touch it. "Dad," I called out. "Dad, are you there?" My small high voice echoed through the forest and faded away. I listened for instants, but nothing came. I cannot possibly describe to you what it felt like to be standing alone in the pitchy blackness of that silent wood in the small hours of the night. The sense of loneliness was overwhelming. The silence was as deep as death, and the only sounds were the ones that I made myself. I tried to keep absolutely still for as long as possible, to see if I could hear anything at all. I listened and listened. I held my breath and listened again. I had a queer feeling that the whole wood was listening with me, the trees, the bushes, the little animals hiding in the undergrowth, and the birds roosting in the branches. All were listening. Even the silence was listening. Silence was listening to silence. I switched on the torch. A brilliant beam of light reached out ahead of me like a long white arm. That was better. Now, at any rate, I could see where I was going. But the keepers would also see. I didn't care about the keepers anymore. The only person I cared about was my father. I wanted him back. I kept the torch on and went deeper into the wood. "Dad!" I shouted. "Dad, here's Danny. Are you there?" I didn't know which direction I was going in. I just went on walking and calling out, walking and calling, and each time I called I would stop and listen. But no answer came. After a time, my voice began to go all trembly. I started to say silly things like, "Oh, Dad, please tell me where you are. Please answer me. Please, please." And I knew that if I wasn't careful, the sheer hopelessness of it all would get the better of me, and I'd simply give up and lie down under the trees. "Are you there, Dad? Are you there?" I shouted. "Here's Danny." I stood still, listening, listening, listening. And in the silence that followed, I heard, or thought I heard, the faint, but oh so faint sound of a human voice. I froze and kept listening. Yes, there it was again. I ran towards the sound. "Dad!" I shouted. "It's Danny! Where are you?" I stopped again and listened. This time the answer came just loud enough for me to hear the words. "I'm here," the voice called out. "I'm over here." It was him. I was so excited that my legs began to get all shaky. "Where are you, Danny?" my father called out. "I'm here, Dad, I'm coming." With the beam of the torch shining ahead of me, I ran towards the voice. The trees were bigger here and spaced farther apart. The ground was a carpet of brown leaves from last year and was good to run on. I didn't call out any more after that. I simply dashed ahead. And all at once, his voice was right in front of me. "Stop, Danny! Stop!" he shouted. I stopped dead. I shone the torch over the ground, but I couldn't see him. "Well, where are you, Dad?" "I'm down here. Come forward slowly, but be careful. Don't fall in." I crept forward. Then I saw the pit. I went to the edge of it and shone the light downward, and there was my father. He was sitting on the floor of the pit, and he looked up into the light and said, "Hello, my marvellous darling. Thank you for coming."